It arrived like an afterthought. No name on the envelope. No flourish. Just an address, a time, and a date. I held it under the kitchen light, tilting it back and forth like the shine might reveal more than the paper gave. There was no greeting. No, we hope you'll join us, no love, no warmth. Just the facts, like a notice tacked to a community board. The kind of thing you send to a neighbor about a lost dog. It sat there beside my tea, curling slightly at the edges as the steam dampened the air. I didn't move it. I didn't touch it again. I just stared. For a while, I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe they were busy or in a hurry. Maybe the invitation had gotten separated from a proper letter. But I knew better. A mother knows. I wasn't invited. I was informed. And somehow, that was worse. I didn't cry. I didn't call Trey. I just sat still in my own kitchen, where the clock ticked louder than usual, and the air felt too still. There was a flicker inside me then, small, but sharp. Like a hairline crack you don't notice until the whole thing shatters. It wasn't grief, not yet. It was something older than that. A familiar, quiet humiliation. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed with the lights off, eyes open, listening to the radiator click and groan like it too had something to say. The invitation was still on the table. I hadn't moved it. Couldn't bear to. I got up around 4, made coffee I wouldn't drink, and stood barefoot on the kitchen tile, my fingers pressed to the edge of the counter for balance. My body knew what my mind was still arguing against. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Quiet, polite, but unmistakably deliberate. Trey and I hadn't always been distant. I raised him alone after his father left, which, in our family, meant I raised him twice. Once as a child, and again as a teenager, when the world tried to make him hard. I was the one who sat in the school parking lot when he locked himself in the counselor's office. I was the one who walked to night shifts at the factory, saving what I could. I made his favorite meal every birthday. Chicken with rosemary potatoes. Always fresh rosemary. He said the smell reminded him of Sunday mornings. By the time he was 15, I had started a fund. I never told him about it, that would have made it a gift, and gifts come with strings. This was different. I took a third job cleaning office buildings after hours. My hands cracked in winter. My back ached. But slowly, the fund grew. Not for me. For him. For his wedding. For the moment he'd want to start his own life, to be proud, to stand beside someone and feel like he had something to offer. I wanted to make that moment easier. Smoother. I wanted him to feel like someone had thought of him, not just the child version of him, but the man he was becoming. It was never about control. That money became its own kind of language, not spoken, but felt. In the meals I skipped. The vacations I canceled. The new coat I never bought. I never told him how much was in it. Just kept adding. Just kept believing. The first time he brought Harper home, I told myself not to form opinions too fast. She was pretty, poised, the kind of young woman who always seemed to be looking past you, not because she was rude, but because she was already imagining the next room. The next step. The next audience. She asked questions in that careful way, the way people ask when they already know what they want to hear. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? She asked Trey, over lasagna. He said something about management. I said something about health insurance. She smiled but didn't laugh. She brought her own flowers the second time she came. Yellow tulips, in a glass vase she handed to me with both hands. For your lovely home, she said. I remember thinking, no one calls it lovely unless they're already trying to remake it. Still, I was kind. I made space. I gave them the guest bedroom when they visited. I put away the family photos, Not all, just a few. The ones where Trey was missing teeth or wearing hand-me-downs. I thought it was the gracious thing to do. After their engagement, Harper took over the planning. She didn't ask. She simply announced. They wanted it small, she said, but elegant. Modern. Understated. A curated guest list, she told me once. I nodded, even though the phrase sat heavy in my mouth like a stone. Trey didn't say much. He sent updates, brief ones, a venue booked, a florist hired, a menu tasting done. And then, one day, a message from his number. Could you route the final deposit through the account? Harper says the planner needs confirmation by Tuesday. He didn't ask if I wanted to help. He asked me to press a button. Like I was a secretary. Still, I said yes. I told myself it was for Trey. That this was my way of showing up, even if it wasn't the version I'd imagined. I pictured him in a tailored suit, standing at the altar with his hands folded nervously, smiling. I clung to that image. Even when my name wasn't on the save the date. Even when Harper's mother sent out the group message about coordinating dresses and I wasn't included. Even when I offered to help with the favors and was told, sweetly, we've got it all covered, but thank you. And now, this. This invitation. This cold, unsigned, unsaid message, you may attend. But only in the capacity we allow. As if I hadn't already attended every sleepless night, every scraped knee, every silent, aching sacrifice that got him here. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I got dressed slowly. Pulled on the gray wool skirt I wore to my sister's funeral. Buttoned a blouse with shaking fingers. I poured the coffee into a thermos, even though I still didn't want it. And then I went to the bedroom, reached under the bed, and pulled out the ledger. It was an old notebook, battered and full of folded receipts, scribbled dates, bank statements with corners softened from time. I flipped through the pages, each one a map of the years I had traded for his future. $26,415. That was the final total. Enough to cover the venue, the band, the food, and half the flowers. I had signed every check. I had approved every wire transfer. I had funded the day. And in the last meeting I'd attended, weeks ago, before Harper stopped replying, I had added a clause. A simple one. Barely a line, at the end of the service contract. All final disbursements are contingent upon signed approval from the originating party. I had done it quietly. Not out of mistrust. Just, because. Because somewhere deep in me, something had whispered, save yourself a door. Now I saw that door. And I knew exactly what to do with it. The wedding was held at a vineyard, an hour's drive north, tucked behind hills that turned golden in the late spring. I arrived early, as instructed on the card, though I doubted the instruction had been meant for me. No one greeted me. No one even looked up as I walked past the rows of white chairs, all trimmed with silk ribbon. I wore navy. Conservative. The same dress I'd worn to Trey's college graduation. I had considered pearls, but left them in the drawer. I stood near the back, clutching a small gift box I'd brought, not a present, exactly, but a token. Something I had found in a drawer. A silver charm Trey had once given me in 8th grade, tiny, with the word forever etched into it. He'd saved for weeks to buy it from a catalog. I had worn it on a bracelet for years. I brought it now without knowing why. Perhaps I still believed in omens. Guests milled around, champagne already in hand. A violinist played something soft, repetitive. I watched people arrive, bridesmaids in blush silk, groomsmen in pale gray, women with impossibly smooth hair greeting each other with kisses that never touched. Someone offered me a flute of champagne. I declined. Not out of protest, my hands were trembling. Then the planner appeared. Young, taut, with a clipboard clutched like a lifeline. She approached, eyes flicking to my face, not with recognition but with mild concern. "Excuse me," she said gently, are you with the Harper party?" I nodded. She glanced at her list, then back at me. "I'm so sorry," she began, voice careful, "but we're actually at capacity for the guest count. There's been a mix-up with seating, and, unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate." "My son is the groom," I said, voice level. Not loud. Just enough. She blinked. "Oh." Then quickly recovered. "Of course. I apologize. I didn't realize. But your name's not on the seating chart. There must have been an oversight." "No need," I said. "I won't stay long." I walked past her, past the rows of guests, and stopped at the edge of the stone courtyard where the ceremony was to begin. From there, I could see everything: the arch of white roses, the flower girl twirling in the grass, the officiant adjusting his notes. Trey stood near the front, handsome in his suit, his jaw set. I thought he might look up. He didn't. I waited. Just long enough to feel the weight of it. The deliberate nature of the omission. And then I turned. Quietly. With no fuss. I walked to the car, set the charm box on the passenger seat, and drove home. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But there was a strange clarity instead. A coldness, not bitter, but clean. Like winter air. I boiled water for tea. Sat at the kitchen table. Opened my laptop. The planner's email was still in my inbox, subject line, "Final payment authorization." I clicked reply. "Dear Ms. Halpern. Thank you for your services in coordinating the Croftweller wedding. I regret to inform you that, per our agreement, final disbursement of funds cannot proceed. The contract specifies approval from the originating party, and I am withholding that approval due to non-compliance with guest acknowledgement terms. Please consider this formal notice of cancellation. The financial obligation remains incomplete. Sincerely. Marianne Weller." I clicked send. Closed the laptop. Then I waited. It didn't take long. By dusk, the calls had started. First the planner. Then a man with an unfamiliar number. Then Harper's mother, whose voice I had only ever heard at formal functions, now shrill, insistent, calling my decision reckless, embarrassing, vindictive. Trey called just after 9. "Mom," he said, already exasperated, "what are you doing?" "I'm resting," I replied. "It's been a long day. The venue's demanding payment. They're saying the card was declined." "I know," I said simply. He paused. "Why?" he asked, quieter. "I think you already know why." "I didn't plan the list," he said, hurriedly. "Harper and her mom handled most of it. They thought that I wouldn't notice. No, that it wouldn't matter." His voice cracked there, just slightly. "That you'd understand. That you wouldn't make a scene." "I didn't," I said. "I left." "You could have said something." "I did, Trey. 3 years ago, when Harper started answering your texts for you. When you stopped coming home for holidays. When I stopped being invited to things I paid for." He didn't reply. Just silence. "And today," I continued, "you saw me. I didn't know they left you off the list. You saw me. You looked at me. And you didn't speak." He took a breath, held it. "I'm sorry," he said, finally. "I thought it would be easier." "It was," I said. "For you." Then I ended the call. I didn't block him. I didn't change my number. But I didn't answer the calls that followed. Instead, I gathered the receipts. the contracts, the email chains. And I began forwarding them, to the planner, to the caterers, to the florist. Each message the same. Funding source withdrawn. Authorization denied. No anger. No threats. Just the truth. By midnight, the headlines had begun appearing online. A local wedding called off mid-ceremony. Vendors unpaid. Guests asked to vacate. I didn't read them. I went to bed. The next morning, the news van was parked across the street. I brewed coffee. Toasted bread. Watered the philodendron. When the knock came, I ignored it. I had nothing to say. I wasn't hiding. I had simply reclaimed something no one else seemed to notice was mine. The right to choose where I stood. By the time the second day passed, the silence had shifted. It wasn't peaceful anymore, it had a hum to it. An edge. The planner stopped calling. So did Harper's mother. But Trey kept trying. First the phone, then texts, then an email that began with, "I'm trying to fix this," and ended with, "I just want to talk." I didn't respond. Not because I was punishing him. But because I had nothing left to say that wouldn't cost me something more than words. I sat on the porch that evening, watching the shadows stretch across the yard. The boxwood bushes had gone leggy, and the hydrangea needed pruning, but I let them be. The yard looked overgrown, unruly. Honest. It matched how I felt. The tea was cold when I remembered it. I didn't warm it. When the doorbell rang, I didn't move. It rang again. Then came a knock. Soft at first. Then firmer. I opened the door slowly. Trey stood there. Alone. No tie. Shirt wrinkled. He looked older. Or maybe I was just seeing clearly for the first time. "Hi," he said. I stepped aside. He came in, pausing at the threshold like he wasn't sure where to stand. We sat at the kitchen table, where the invitation had once rested. "I didn't know," he said, after a while. "About the clause. About the contracts." "You didn't ask," I said. "Not then." He stared at his hands, thumb rubbing the skin of his palm like he was trying to press out guilt. "She told me it was a formality. That you didn't mind. That you'd already given your blessing." I said nothing. "She said you didn't want to be in the photos. That you'd asked not to walk me down the aisle. That you were too tired for the rehearsal dinner." My throat tightened. I shook my head once. "No." He closed his eyes. "I believed her," he said. "Because it was easier than asking you." Silence stretched between us. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. "I saw you," he said quietly. "At the ceremony. Standing at the edge. I thought you'd come to say goodbye." "I had," I said. "But not in the way you think." He nodded, like that made sense. Then he reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. "The charm. I found it in the car," he said. "When I was cleaning out the glove box. I remember buying it. I used to check your bracelet every morning before school to see if you were still wearing it." I touched the charm gently. It was cold. "I kept it for years," I said. "It reminded me of when love was simple." He looked at me, eyes soft. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't," I said. "But you can start by telling the truth." He nodded. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't look like someone else's husband, or a stranger in a suit. He looked like my son. That week, I did not reauthorize any payments. I did not call the vendors back. I did not issue a statement to the press, though they tried to reach me. Instead, I made a list. Not a revenge list. Not even a list of wrongs. A list of names. Women I'd known, quiet, overlooked women. Irene, who lived 3 streets down and whose daughter married without telling her. Carol, whose son stopped visiting after he remarried. Janet, who was forced out of her home after her husband passed, her name erased from the deed by stepchildren. I called them. Every one. I'd like to invite you to dinner, I said. Not a holiday. Not a potluck. Just, a table for us. They said yes. Some hesitantly. Some with disbelief. One with tears. I hosted it the next Friday. No place cards. No dress code. Just warm lighting, slow music, and food made by hand. We called it the other table. There was laughter. Some tears. A toast to the mothers who stayed silent too long. A prayer for the ones who still were. After the dishes were cleared, I passed around a small envelope to each woman. Inside, a card with her name, and beneath it, a single sentence. You belong at this table. Not because of what you gave. But because of who you are. One by one, they pressed the cards to their chests. No one spoke for a long time. Trey visited again the following week. I told Harper, he said. About the contracts. About what she did. And? She said I chose the wrong side. I nodded slowly. Did you? He didn't answer. He just stood there, staring out the window like it might hold the answer. Mom, he said, finally, I don't know who I am without you. I looked at him for a long time. And then I said the thing I'd waited years to believe. That's not your fault. And it's not your burden either. He cried then. Quietly. Like a boy. I held him. Not to make it better. Just to let him know I was still there. The letter from Harper came 3 days later. No signature. Just a string of sentences meant to sting. You humiliated me. You cost me everything. You should have died quietly like mothers do. I read only the first line before tearing it in half. Then again. And again. When the paper was no longer readable, I dropped the pieces in the fire. Some things do not deserve reply. It's quiet now. A good quiet. I've cleared the guest room, made space for books and yarn and seeds I haven't planted in years. I've reopened the ledger, not to record sacrifices, but joys. Each day, I write one thing I did only for myself. Today, I bought butter I didn't need. Just because it came in gold foil and made me feel extravagant. Tomorrow, I'll see. I don't need to win. I'm not fighting. I'm simply done disappearing. It's been months now. Not long in the eyes of the world, but long enough for quiet things to settle. Long enough for the dust to stop feeling like evidence and start feeling like peace. Trey still visits, though not as often. He never brings Harper. Sometimes he brings flowers. Once, he brought tulips, pink. I didn't ask if he remembered. I didn't need to. He sits in the kitchen, where the kettle always whistles just once before I take it off the burner. He talks more now. Slower. Like he's trying to hear himself as he speaks. Sometimes he stays until the light fades through the curtains and the silence feels kind again. We don't talk about the wedding anymore. We talk about little things. The garden. The roof. A bird he saw at the gas station. He doesn't say he's sorry. Not in words. But I hear it in his pauses. I see it in how he picks up his mug with both hands like he's grounding himself. That's enough. I don't ask about Harper. I don't ask if they're together, or what she says now, or whether her family ever learned to speak of me with anything other than derision. I don't need to know. Not anymore. What matters is this: he comes. Not out of guilt. Not because he needs something. But because he wants to sit at the table again. Because, somehow, it still feels like home. The other table has grown. What started as 7 women and a single casserole has turned into something else entirely. We rotate houses now. Potlucks, yes, but also letters read aloud, toasts given, stories shared like communion. We have rules. No apologies. No false humility. And no pretending. If someone cries, we pass the napkins without comment. If someone goes quiet, we let her. If someone says she feels invisible, we tell her, we see you. I had place cards printed last month, not for formality, but to give us back our names. Embossed. Weighty. Something to keep, to hold, to remind ourselves that we are not ghosts. We're planning a trip next spring. Not Hawaii, like I once imagined for the family that let me down, but somewhere green, with wildflowers and water we can wade into without asking permission. Somewhere we can be loud. Somewhere no one rolls their eyes when we laugh too long. Somewhere we don't have to explain what we've lost, because everyone at the table already knows. A few weeks ago, I found the lavender candle in the bottom drawer of my nightstand. I'd packed it away after the wedding, certain I'd never need it again. I lit it anyway. Just to see if it still smelled like memory. It did. It smelled like the first beach trip with Trey's father. Like sand and sweetness and the promise of warmth even in a cold world. I sat in the dark with it burning beside me, watching the light flicker across the pages of a new ledger, one not for money, but for stories. My stories. Not the ones told by others, shaped by edits and omissions, but mine. There's a page about my first job, scooping ice cream at 17, wearing shoes a size too small. A page about the day I got my first gray hair, and plucked it, and immediately regretted it. A page about the time I danced alone in the living room after my divorce, barefoot and laughing because no one was watching. And I'm writing the page about the wedding too, not the spectacle, not the fallout, but the moment I chose myself. The moment I realized that love without respect is not love at all. That moment belongs to me. No one can erase it. Yesterday, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photo. Me. At the other table. Laughing, head thrown back, mouth open. The kind of laugh you don't perform. The kind that erupts. Taped to the back was a note. You look like someone who never disappeared. There was no signature. I didn't need one. Whoever sent it, they understood. And that's all I've ever wanted, really. To be understood. To be seen. Not as the martyr. Not as the victim. But as a woman who built, and broke, and built again. As someone who stayed too long, and then finally left. As someone who gave, deeply, foolishly, faithfully, and then learned to give differently. To herself. The final letter from Harper came in a cream envelope. My name typed in perfect script. No return address. No warmth. I opened it slowly, standing by the sink. The words were sharp, as always. Words like narcissist, disruption, reputation. A paragraph about the humiliation of unpaid bills. A claim that I had destroyed a day meant to be sacred. I read the first line. Then stopped. Folded the letter once. Then again. Then dropped it into the trash. Because that's the thing she never understood. I wasn't trying to win. I wasn't fighting for attention, or control, or revenge. I was simply refusing to be erased. There is no parade for women like me. No headline that reads, "Mother refuses to disappear." No holiday named after those who gave and were cast aside. But in the quiet, we find each other. In the absence of invitation, we make our own table. In the silence, we sing. Not for show. For truth. And this story, this table, this ledger of names, is mine. Forever.